I was able to get in contact with Tim Henry, owner-operator of Arctic Engineering here in Fairbanks, and Tim is an amazing resource to have in our market, and I highly recommend him to all of my clients due to the way he systematically approaches each and every home inspection with flexibility in finding solutions for his repairs, and the fact that he just flat out cares about our community. In preparation for this video and with his permission, I went through Arctic Engineering's Facebook page and selected a few videos that I think categorize the 5 reasons not to buy a home here in Fairbanks. So let's get into it. Number 1 on our list is just weird Fairbanks things. Okay, story time. So when I was in high school in Beaver Creek, Ohio, a little over 20 years ago, I took a wood shop class. And in that class, I used a bandsaw to make a little wooden back massager with wooden wheels. And it was adorable. Here's a picture of it. Anyway, so fast forward a few years, I bought a home in Fairbanks in 2011, and I was able to take that limited carpentry knowledge and build a woodshed for my firewood. It was 16 by 20 and about 10 feet tall, and it kept my wood dry. Now, it was in no way level, and there were no inspections to speak of, but I could take everything I learned from that building experience and turn around and build a home, as long as it wasn't in city limits of Fairbanks or North Pole, and sell it legally without ever having it inspected. And it, chances are, would be up to 0 building codes, and I could do that. In the state of Alaska, that's A-okay. And I know, it's scary, right? Now, knowing the limitations in my own carpentry skills, it's what makes me and Apex Realty Group rely upon a strategy of finding any reason to disqualify a home for our buyers. And although we're not home inspectors or engineers by any stretch of the imagination, if you stay tuned, you'll find out a few of these reasons yourself. So if we take a look at this first one, you'll see that these homeowners were in need of some extra support for their floor joists. So they took a couple of 8x8 posts, put a round of firewood on it, then put a concrete block on it, then put a little shim just to kind of level things out. Not so great. So this next one has not 1, but 2 doorknobs to gain access to the home. So in order to get in, you'd have to turn both knobs. In order to get out, you'd have to turn both knobs. So this doesn't seem like a big deal, but if there was an emergency situation and you needed to evacuate, it's probably going to be a big deal. This next one is a case of iron piping having a shelf life of about 100 years and a whole bunch of rubber fittings holding it all together that have a shelf life of about 20 years. So do the math. One of these things is going to fail before the next, and some buyer in the future is going to have to pay for that repair. This last one is a pretty severe issue that likely could have resulted in a fire, and it doesn't look like it's something that just happened overnight either. It likely took some time and showed some signs as it was developing too. Next on the list is the roof. Now, a lot of things happening with the roof are really only going to be observable from up on the roof during a home inspection, but these photos are things that we can generally see from the ground level and are definitely concerning. Check these out. So you'll hear many real estate professionals talking about roofs and composite shingles to their buyers and sellers and saying things like, oh, these shingles should last anywhere between like 30 and 40 years. But despite even that, I mean, we're still seeing shingles that are lasting 7 or 8 years sometimes, especially when they look like this or even this. Now, it's not that these real estate professionals are lying, it's just that they don't know any better. They've not seen what an interior Alaska winter can do to shingles, or they're just regurgitating things that they've already been told, and they just don't know the truth. They don't know reality necessarily. So that's just what they say. And typically when these shingles are failing and we've got other issues inside of the roof because of these shingles failing, you know, we'll see ice damming, such as this. An ice dam is a ridge of ice that forms at the edge of a roof and prevents melting snow or water, you may have heard of it, from draining off of the roof. So it just kind of sits there, and it eventually backs up, you know, behind the dam and leaks into the home and causes damage to walls, ceilings, or even insulation in other areas. Here's a visual that kind of makes it a little bit easier to understand. Now, ice damming is made much easier to occur when there's a break in the waterproof barrier on your roof, and time and sun and repeated scraping of the roof with a shovel or other implements is sure to decrease the life of your shingles. So be mindful of that every winter when you're up there scraping your roof off. Next on our list, since we're talking about major fixes on a home, let's talk about foundations. So foundations in Fairbanks are something that must be done right and must be done according to the type of ground that the home is going to be built on. That makes sense, right? Of course it does. It wouldn't make a lot of sense to pour a big old concrete slab on ground that is sure to be frost heaving every winter, does it? No, definitely not, right? You wouldn't want to do that. Well, let's take a look at some examples where folks did just that. Now, the problem with this is that builders are only able to build with the technology of their time based on the data at their disposal when they collected it. So the process for determining what the soil is what the soil looks like is that the builders will either dig a test hole or drill a test hole, and then they will look at the ground, look at that core if they drilled a hole, and see what soil is at what depths. They'll get an engineer, a soil expert, to take a look at this. And here's an example of somebody that was drilling a hole, and you'll see that this test hole came up with a high moisture content clay, which sounds to me like it's probably going to have a high chance of frost heaving. It's not something you necessarily want to be pouring a whole lot of concrete on. But the problem with this is that soil is kind of a dynamic thing. It changes all the time depending on drainage, depending on all kinds of different features. So we never know necessarily, just because we drill a hole today doesn't necessarily mean that 10 years from now that soil is going to remain the same specifications, the same moisture content as it will, like I said, in 10 years. But the problem with completely saturated with water and then expanding in all directions and pushing in foundations. Take a look at these. Now, these first two are from concrete block foundations, and the second two are from an all-weather wood foundation. And I put them in this order because I wanted to show you that something as strong as a concrete block foundation is susceptible to frozen soil. And an all-weather wood foundation is perfectly strong enough for the interior if it's done right, and if the home has a drainage plan that will take water away from the base of the foundation. And believe it or not, this can be achieved with something as simple as installing gutters. But not even this mighty 8-inch insulated concrete block foundation is strong enough to withstand the horizontal pressure from frozen soil. Are these things scary? Yep. Do realtors like seeing these things? Nope. But do sellers like seeing these things either? Nope. Absolutely not. But are they the norm? No, for sure. They're absolutely not the norm. In fact, we see some amazing foundations too. Here are a couple examples. These two foundations were definitely done right according to the soils. And when I'm showing homes to buyers, these are definitely things that we point out. We give rave reviews. We're like, oh my gosh, look at this robust foundation. This is gorgeous. I wish my home had a foundation like this. But we can only point these things out if we're doing some due diligence during showings. That means getting down into the crawl space. That means poking your head into a dark hole more than likely. And not a lot of people are super comfortable with that. So if you're out on a showing and you see a crawl space, or you know that this property that you're taking a look at has a crawl space, insist on getting down in there to take a look at things. There are a huge array of things that could be going wrong in your crawl space, and knowing what's going on down there is super important. So you could absolutely avoid buying a lemon by just taking a look at your crawl space. So get down and dirty, get in there.
Thinking about moving to Fairbanks? Well, click on the link below for my free relocation guide where I talk about top schools, top neighborhoods, and so much more.
Next on our list is plumbing, heating, and just general water issues. You may have guessed by now that water and keeping it only where it belongs is kind of a good thing. If we show up to a showing and see something like this, then we may want to just move on to the next house. Another issue that we have with our water, and I touched on this in our water sources video, is that due to seismic activity or even poorly drilled wells, we can see some pretty nasty water sometimes, unless it's run through some sophisticated water treatment. Both of these are due to issues with a screen either failing or missing at the end of the well line. This isn't something that we'll necessarily be able to see during a showing because no one from Apex Realty Group or even myself is going to be taking apart your water filter or pulling up your well line. But during a home inspection, if Tim goes to check your water pressure and it's just running really, really slow, he might do some digging to investigate what that might be. And if he looks at your water filter and sees that it's just completely filled with sediment, and he takes it off. You may take a picture just like those. Now with these next pictures, these are surefire signs that your water's treatment system in your home isn't operating where it needs to be, or the home's been sitting vacant for a really long time. Either way, it's up to you to determine whether or not you want to be drinking this water. Now, last on our list are safety issues. Now, these are issues that when we see them during showings, we pick up the phone and make some phone calls to the listing licensee to recommend that the seller take some action immediately. This first safety issue is something that can definitely be seen from the ground during showings, and it's a wood stove chimney that's clogged with creosote. Creosote is a byproduct of burning wet wood in a wood stove, and it is super dangerous. And if you see your chimney looking something like this, then you need to get your chimney swept immediately. Don't start another fire in that chimney because it could likely result in a chimney fire, which can lead to a catastrophic loss of your home or something even worse. And I have started a chimney fire myself, and it is not something that you want to be involved in. The next thing that happens a lot is when things are done on the cheap, and sometimes owner builders will use cheaper materials like nails instead of screws for hanging sheetrock. And while this doesn't seem like a big deal, it certainly is when you go to hang that sheetrock on the ceiling and then dump a whole bunch of insulation on top of it, like this. The next safety concern is just general electrical problems. And although I'm not an electrician and nobody else on my team is an electrician, I think I know a not so great electrical system when I see one. Here are some examples. Like I said, not an electrician, but those just don't pass the sniff test. Now, ultimately, some of these things are just plain weird and make us scratch our heads every time that we see them. But pointing these out help our buyers potentially avoid major issues with their new home. And if these surface issues are happening, imagine what else could be happening at the bottom of that iceberg. Now remember, we're not home inspectors or engineers, but we can make a recommendation for a great one with Tim Henry at Arctic Engineering. And I know that this was a long video, but if you stuck through it, I hope you got some value out of it. If you did, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and let us know in the comment section which of these was the biggest disqualifier for you. And as always, if you're planning a move to Fairbanks, we'd love to hear from you. Give us a call at 907-885-0316. Have a great day.